Pineapple Sails, we do build all of the sails that we make from start to finish right here in this room. I think we're maybe control freaks. We sub out absolutely nothing. We buy sailcloth. Everything else we do right here in this room. Cami Richards, the founder of Pineapple Sails, a business that we started almost 40 years ago. The mainsail is for a Cal 33, belongs to a fellow named Jim Erskine at Corinthian Yacht Club, and sail certainly optimized for sailing out of Corinthian, which is like complete madness. They start all their races in a great big hole right in front of the yacht club, and then they sail 200 yards out of Raccoon Straits and it's blowing 30. And they sail in 30 knots up to Yellow Bluff and then down to Knox in 30 knots of breeze, and then they reach back across the top Angel Island and they finish in the same hole they started in. So we have this large problem of trying to make one sail go from 0 to 30 knots, and the best way to fight that is to use a yarn that does not stretch, and that's what carbons and Kevlars do, is that they just don't yield. So even though the loads can be very, very high when it's blowing 30, the sail doesn't change shape, so the sail will stay really, really flat even when it's windy. For sail design, we use BSG software. Once you develop a three-dimensional shape, you then basically can lay skins onto that three-dimensional mold in any direction that you want. There's an awful lot of freedom there, and the purpose for having that freedom there is to align the strong yarns of carbon with the stresses that are going to be carried by the sail. If the yarns don't line up right, then the sail won't behave right because you're not pulling on a strong direction in the fabric. We have a computer-controlled plotter that is basically a 70-foot long vacuum table, so that when you roll out a piece of cloth on the table and you turn on the pump, the cloth is sucked down onto the table so the cloth can't move. And while the vacuum holds the cloth down, a computer-controlled plotter marches up and down the table, and it cuts out the parts and it labels the parts and draws where the batten pockets go, and it does all the things that we used to do when I was younger on our hands and knees crawling around on the floor. In joining laminate like this, there's several processes on what are called the vertical seams, the seams that run essentially parallel to the carbon. Two-sided adhesive is used where we very carefully join the individual pieces together, and then we sew them with just a single row of triple stitching, and then out of that we end up with 5 large pieces of the mainsail that are then glued together in the horizontal seams. The horizontal seams are the seams that carry the big load because we're trying to actually tear them apart. On the horizontal seams, the big seams, they are glued together with a hot glue gun, and they're not sewn at all. When the thing breaks, it typically breaks adjacent to the glued seam and not through the glued seam. So the bonding in that seam is as strong as the cloth is. In our assembly process, when we get the sail all into one piece, we put it down flat on the floor, and we get a big, long lofting batten that we lay down along the sail to refair that curve to be sure that it's just absolutely perfect. The curve on the front edge is just tremendously, tremendously important. It is the side of the sail that links the fabric to the boat, and if that edge is not just perfect, then the sail's shape is not going to be what was anticipated. If you go from 1 layer to 5 layers of carbon, the sail would certainly break right on that transition. So we have to have a very elegant transition between one layer of carbon into multiple layers of carbon into multiple layers of carbon, so that we get a gradation of strength, because the load changes in intensity as you move out from where the corner is. By the time you get to the halyard, you're handing the whole load of the sailcloth into the halyard shackle connected to the headboard. To me personally, I think there's great joy in all of the steps. And if all I did was design sails and never talk to the customer, that wouldn't be as enjoyable as it is today. Or if all I did was cut out the pieces and sew the pieces and physically assemble the sail into one piece, that is enjoyable work to me. But if that's all that I did, that wouldn't be as enjoyable as what I get to do today. The delightful part of my job is that I get to do all of the parts. Every sail that we make is very special to me, to the owner, and the manufacturing process that we use is basically the sail is made by just one person. And you know, one person does it from start to finish, and they own it. They're responsible for it. They're proud of it too. It's very important to them. And sails can come in here 5-10 years later, and somebody will walk up and say, "Oh, I made this sail," and it's great joy right there too. People are proud of what they do.